Welcome, age of vintage society. James Arness injured his leg in the war from a gun, and ironically he acted in a long-running film called Gunsmoke. The man gathered a cult following for his lead roles in popular Western series, both in America and Europe. Why John Wayne looked up to James Arness. I hope you know, my viewers, how much I appreciate you. Thank you for your generous comments and for the Patreons. This channel would not have been successful without you. Big thanks to those who watched the video right to the end. James Arness was built to be an action hero with his incredible 6 feet 7 inches. His frame was powerful, strengthened by military training and actual participation in the Second World War. The man was taller than the men that were considered tall in Hollywood. John Wayne, one of the biggest action stars of the era, looked up to James. But with great height and fame comes the risk of being typecast, and typecast he was. But he didn't mind. He accepted that he would mostly play an action film hero, or, more specifically, a Western action film hero. The man played a Western action hero for a franchise that lasted 50 years. That franchise was Gunsmoke, and for a long while it was the TV series with the most episodes with a character with the most airtime. However, the Law and Order series has dethroned it. It was in the first 20 most highly rated TV shows during its time. The TV show that has a similar pedigree currently will be Doctor Who. Needless to say, Gunsmoke was a great success, and our gut feeling says if they had used another actor other than James, they might not have had the success they had. Honestly, nothing says a Western law enforcement officer better than a towering figure capable of blocking people's view of the sun. His physique spelled doom for the mischief makers in Dodge, the frontier town that served as Gunsmoke's setting. The man literally was the long arm of the law. Funnily enough, he would have missed the role of Matt Dillon, the show's lead character. First, the lead role wasn't meant for him, but for John Wayne. Wayne turned down the role, saying it should go to a younger actor. In that same discussion, he brought up James's name. To smoothen his recommendation, John Wayne offered to introduce the show to the audience in the first episode. At the time, James was in John Wayne's production company and had made 4 films with the legendary star within 2 years of his contract. He had roles in Hondo, Big Jim McLean, Island in the Sky, and The Sea Chase. Apart from their professional relationship, James and John had a strong friendship. He was a one-of-a-kind guy. There just was never anybody else like him, James Arness described John Wayne. Still, despite John's recommendations, James wasn't convinced about the project simply because it was on TV. While he hadn't attained fame, Arness made money from acting, even if it wasn't killing or close to half of what established stars got. He, like other actors, hoped to catch his big break. James was convinced TV wasn't a place to catch his big success. He wasn't alone in this feeling, as many actors felt the same way, but John wasn't done with him. "Go ahead and take it, Jim," John encouraged Arness. Then Wayne continued, "You're too big for pictures. Guys like Gregory Peck and I don't want a big lug like you towering over us. Make your mark on television." That was the truth. Exceptionally tall actors struggled for roles in Hollywood. Lex Barker was an example of this. He became Tarzan and had to leave Hollywood for Europe in order to shine properly as a star. Hollywood loved macho men, but they couldn't be too macho at that time, so James Arness listened and took the role. For 50 years he played the role. The success of Gunsmoke as a TV show, enough to survive different cancellation attempts, was impressive. The show wasn't fresh and had spent a few years behind a radio show with William Conrad as the lead. William was exceptional, but he didn't have the physical quality to be the lead for the TV show. Still, William planted the Gunsmoke seed in the audience's mind while James tended the plant and helped it grow into a sturdy tree that bore the fruit of exciting entertainment. Our own Iliad and Odyssey, Cecil Smith of the LA Times said, such was the impression the film held in the mind of the audience. The film maintained relevance and freshness as the cast and crew ensured that it was related to modern times. Despite numerous attempts to cancel the film, it survived due to the onslaught going on against Western films. However, it exhausted all its 9 lives in 1975 as it was eventually cancelled despite audiences wanting otherwise. Wallace Markfield penned an appreciation for James when it ended. He wrote, "The camera really loved his face, and with good reason. It was a face that would age well, and that, while aging, would carry intimations of waste, loss, and futility." From 1955 to 1975 it dominated other TV shows within the period, as it ran for 21 seasons and had 179 episodes. It consistently ranked high due to the love the audience had for it, and this led to 5 TV movies. The first one came 12 years after the cancellation of the series, with the last film coming out in 1994. Arness became a legend through what he feared would be his end as an actor. The interesting part was he never thought about leaving the film to chase other opportunities, unlike some of his co-stars. He was comfortable playing the same guy for years, even if it meant being stereotyped and boxed in place. For all his initial reluctance, the Gunsmoke environment suited him and his sensibilities. Plus the money was coming in, and his name had spread around American households. He had achieved his name of getting known, and made money alongside it. What more did he need? In a 1962 interview, James said, "Maybe there isn't much more I can do with the role after all this time, but so what? The dough's still coming in, and I could keep on playing Matt Dillon forever." Danny Weaver left to look for better opportunities. It was a big mistake, and Arness let him know. Arness told Danny he would be back, but Danny didn't believe it. Danny was the first person cast for the show, and after 6 years, he felt it was time for him to move on. But life had other plans. After struggling, he came back to the show. Danny was a fan favourite, and his absence put the filmmakers in a tough spot. The studio got tons of letters from fans demanding that Danny be returned. The studio was at a loss as they didn't tell Danny to leave, and they had planned too much of the show's continuance around him. It would take a huge amount of work to try to fit another person into that role. But Danny returned, and the series got back on track. However, this return wasn't till the series ended. Danny left, and this time he got the success he wanted. Heck, he even rose up the rank to hear the Screen Actors Guild. James wasn't like other people who had the burning desire to become an actor when they were small. He didn't have formal training, nor did he initially pursue formal training. James didn't have parents that loved the theatre, who were actors, or who failed to become actors. His childhood was filled with mundane stuff, and he wasn't sent to another dance or art studio. He was far flung from the trappings of Hollywood and its glamour. Having other interests while growing up, and his journey to becoming a cult hero, is refreshing. He was born as James King Arness on May 26, 1923 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the United States, to his businessman father and journalist mother. James attended high school in Minneapolis and had a courier job when he was in high school. He wasn't a model student, and from his attitude it looked like school was a chore, as he avoided attending many classes. He enrolled in college but dropped out to join the army, hoping to be a Navy fighter pilot, but his height got in the way. The requirement to get into the Navy fighter pilot rank was 6 feet 2 inches. He was 5 inches taller. Still, he didn't give up on his dream to serve in the army, and chose to join the infantry instead. He was wounded in Italy, and due to the severity of the injury he had to be medically evacuated. He was put in the 91st General Hospital in Clinton, Iowa. There he had multiple surgeries, and after the surgeries and recovery was honourably discharged and was decorated for his service. He had the Purple Heart and Bronze Star Medal, among others. But his injury, though healed, still lingered. His brother Peter Graves visited him as he healed, and he took about a year to heal fully. Surprised? Peter Graves and James are siblings. While James altered the spelling of the Buss surname, Peter chose his mother's maiden name as his stage name. It was Peter that prevented James from getting sad about his condition, and encouraged him that he could still find work as a civilian. He even whispered the possibility of being a radio star to James. Life after for James came in the form of radio announcer work. He was enjoying his quiet life as a civilian, but a friend came to him and injected excitement into his life. The friend encouraged Jim to come along with him to California because he knew someone who did extra work in films. Arness went to California and began to audition. He got small roles and went to an acting school. His film debut was The Brother of Katie Holstrom, in which Loretta Young played the farmer's daughter. That was the beginning. Then he came to a couple of sci-fi films, and he was signed to John Wayne's production company, where he made a few films before Gunsmoke. Gunsmoke was legendary, and since the cast and crew were so much in harmony, every action they took was scrutinized. One of the actors that were under scrutiny the most was James Arness. This was ironic because James was the most stoic person in the cast. No one truly knew much about him, as he prioritized his privacy. He just went on with his acting business, fanfare and publicity be damned. His distaste for publicity was so intense that he pulled strings to ensure journalists weren't allowed on the set of Gunsmoke. This made people believe the actor was proud and wasn't a great personality to the rest of the cast. Arness didn't give life to those rumours and debunked them in an interview. Arness claimed the reason for his absence from these publicity events was that he was tired. "It's tremendously fatiguing for me to work all week, then hop on a plane or train and travel maybe 2,000 or 3,000 miles on a weekend, attending social and civic functions, parties and so on, and then fly back to work." Initially he went to these events with co-star Dennis Weaver, but he couldn't keep up with them. The other would go to these events, and he would be at home relaxing. He made it clear that his absence from the cast was not because they weren't close. One of these co-stars respected James so much that he named his son after James. There is some belief in what Jim, as John Wayne called him, said. Remember, he served in the army and fought in the Second World War and got injured. He healed, but he faced too much pain in his leg when he was alive, and his role in Gunsmoke caused him constant pain. This is because the horse riding involved was a trigger. Apart from this, there was the shyness issue. Yes, the giant man was a shy man, a real-life gentle giant. He was sensitive too, and loved reading poems. With the way Hollywood had depicted men of a certain frame, these were not the habits many people thought of when they imagined their action heroes. Here was James poring through poetry and pondering, a sweet, sensitive, shy, tall man who preferred to be left alone rather than become the object of the paparazzi. He was aloof from the usual gatherings of Hollywood. Hollywood loves its stars to dazzle, but James preferred the soft twinkling. But his stoicism didn't mean he didn't know how to have fun or do things many people consider to be fun. He loved surfing and yacht racing. Surfing was something most people attributed to people who had no work and would just sit on the beach, binging on alcohol or goofing around. James didn't care. He was a master of the waves, and it shall do his bidding. The man loved to laugh, and he had a great sense of humour. Reports say he would get into giggling fits on set that filming had to be delayed. Imagine how much laughing that would have happened for the filmmakers to stop shooting. His laughter must have been infectious, too. After Gunsmoke made him popular in America, his next series made him prominent in Europe. Matt Dillon was to America what Zeb McCahan was to Europe. How the West Was Won, with its lead character Zeb McCahan, had a cult following in Europe with many rebroadcasts over the years. James married twice. His first marriage was in 1948 to Virginia Chapman, who had 2 children for him, Rolf and Jenny Lee. Also, he adopted Virginia's son Craig, who would later create Westlight, a photography agency, and work for National Geographic as a photographer. Rolf made a career out of his dad's surfing hobby and became the 1970 World Surfing Champion. Sadly, Jenny died. Jenny Lee, like her mother, Virginia, used substances, leading to the death of the 2. James had divorced Virginia in 1963 and got custody of the children. Perhaps the reason for the divorce was that Virginia abused substances. 4 years after divorcing Virginia, James moved on and got into a relationship with Thordis Brandt, but the 2 never married, even though they were together for 6 years. The 3rd time was the charm for James, as he married Janet Surtees, and they were together till he died. Arness lived a long life. The man who spent part of his youth hopping on freight trains grew old and died of old age in Los Angeles. The man helped preserve Western films longer for their fans before audience taste shifted later on. He was ultimately grateful to his fans who helped make Gunsmoke and a few of his other projects popular. He appreciated his colleagues and expressed his pride in being able to work with them. So much for the arrogant man people thought him to be. Rest well, Matt Dillon. There are characters who can't forget each other, but there are actors who are caught by something else in each other. Why Donald Sutherland couldn't forget Jane Fonda's melons. Watch this video.